Okay, Sie können anfangen.
Okay. I would like to welcome you all to our talk about the US elections of November 3rd and what they actually mean for us Europeans. I'm Heinrich Kreft. I'm a lecturer here at Andrássy University in Budapest since last September. During the last 35 years, I was a German diplomat, and during the last 4 years, German ambassador in Luxembourg. I also worked at the German embassy in Washington, D.C., and many years ago, I also studied in the United States. Here at Andrássy, the only German language university in Hungary, and even the only German language university outside German-speaking countries. I'm teaching a course on transatlantic relations and also another one on Chinese, the rise of China and its challenge to the West. I'm also directing here the Center for Diplomacy at Andrássy. We have many students here at the university looking for a career in diplomacy, a career in international organizations or European organizations, and for that we are organizing special training courses to prepare these students for such a career. So if you are interested in such a career, you might have a look at the web page of Andrássy. Well, let's now dive into the topic of today. You probably all have watched the drama of the US elections of November 3rd, and the following days, we could also say the following weeks, basically until today. This was probably the case not just in Europe, but also in most countries around the globe, because United States, US foreign policy is important for nearly every country around the globe. You probably recall that President Trump's 4 years were a difficult time for Europeans and for transatlantic relations in general. President Trump didn't really have a great interest in Europe. He even called NATO an obsolete organization. Europeans should pay for their own security. Well, fair enough. That's a point we should basically agree with the Americans, because at the end, all of us, all Europeans, signed the agreement to spend 2% of our GDP on security. Well, but also President Trump called Europe an adversary and attacked Europe in a similar way as for example, he attacked China. That's why probably most Europeans, particularly in Germany, would have voted for Biden if they would have had a chance to vote in the US elections on November 3rd. Well, as we all know, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won the elections, but the victory, well, it looked razor thin on the evening of the 3rd and the following night. But at the end, the win was much bigger than it looked like during the first 24 hours, because many of those Americans who had voted for the Democratic Party had actually voted by mail as recommended Biden, Harris, and their campaign. Well, but at the end, Democrats had expected a big win. They had expected a blue wave. They had expected a tsunami, and that definitely didn't happen. They barely could hold on the majority in the House. They lost a couple of seats, and they didn't actually manage to win the Senate, what actually quite a few within the Democratic camp had expected. Well, it's not really decided yet because the 2 seats in Georgia have not yet been decided. There will be another election in early January, but those 2 seats were held by Republican senators, so it's not very likely that the Democrats will win both, and they would have to win both in order to have a 50-50 majority. Well, 50-50 is not a majority, but in case of a 50-50 stalemate in the Senate, it's the vice president who actually tips the balance in favor of the Democrats because of Kamala Harris. Well, so most likely President Trump will have to deal with a Senate which is held by Republicans, which is controlled by Republicans. And well, we have seen it during the campaign. We have seen it during the last 4 years. We have already seen it during the Obama 8 years, that the US is a very polarized, a very divided country. And so is the Senate. So the majority of Republicans are hostile vis-a-vis Biden, though Biden was a senator for a long time, and so he might be able to work with a few of the senators to get some of his projects through. Well, what does the Biden administration actually mean for us, for Europe? President Biden is very likely to reaffirm US commitment to democratic alliances, to multilateral cooperation, and to a rules-based international order. Well, this sounds like music for us Europeans, but also a Biden presidency holds a couple of uncertainties. It's definitely not a return to the Obama times. It's not a return to the Clinton era. The US has changed, the global environment has changed, and President Biden's presidency will be very much shaped by the domestic situation in the US and, of course, by the changed global environment. Well, there can be no doubt Biden is an internationalist. Biden is even an Atlanticist. During his 8 years as vice president, he helped shaping Obama's foreign policy in many aspects, from diplomacy to alliances, from trade to global economics, from defense to decisions about the use of military force. Before that, he served even a longer time in the Senate, and most of the time as chairman of the influential Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He is well known in Europe as a lifetime supporter of NATO. He's known as a free and fair trader, and he's known for a proactive US foreign policy, a proactive global leadership of the US. Well, will the President Joe Biden be able to shape American foreign policy according to his beliefs, according to his reflexes, according to his instincts? This will be definitely determined mainly by his domestic situation back home. He will have to pay more attention to his own party than President Trump had to do. He was brought into office by a very broad coalition from socialists like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren Wall Street big shots, multi-billionaires like Michael Bloomberg, who got him at the end elected. The progressive wing of the Democratic Party is traditionally skeptical of US engagement abroad, including military commitments and the benefits of trade and globalization. The domestic challenges are without any doubt immense for the president-elect and his incoming administration. From the pandemic to race to the economic inequality, which has grown tremendously during the last couple of years in the US. Well, Biden has declared to reach out to the other side of the political fence. He has declared to invest in overcoming the divide of the country. That will definitely be not an easy task. Like us in Europe, until next summer, he will definitely have to concentrate on fighting the virus, on fighting the pandemic, on rebuilding the economy, which has been very much damaged by the pandemic. 250,000, 250,000 Americans have died because of the coronavirus during the last 8 months. At the same time, he wants, from day one in office, start to rebuild US alliances around the globe. He wants to rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement. He has promised to re-engage European allies and partners and seek closer cooperation on many, many foreign policy and security policy issues with them. He is on the record viewing NATO as the most important alliance in history of the world, he said during his campaign. On several key issues, he would seek to align more closely with European policy priorities. I already mentioned the Paris Climate Agreement and the nomination of former Foreign Minister John Kerry as a special appointee for climate issues, I think is a signal that he will put the fight against climate change very high on his agenda. Well, he might also reconsider re-entering the Iran nuclear deal, another issue very dear to us Europeans. But we should not expect that he will not continue to push for burden sharing and greater allies' commitments to defense spending, the famous 2% goal. The rhetoric will be much more friendly, and that is, of course, not unimportant. As we say in German, der Ton macht die Musik. It's the tone which makes the music. Given his situation at home, it is open if Biden will take action to significantly strengthen NATO and American defense posture in Europe, what particularly some countries, Poland and the Baltics, would very much like because of their perceived threat of by Putin's Russia. Another important issue for us Europeans, of course, is trade. The EU and specifically Germany, but also some smaller countries, we are much more dependent on trade. We are much more dependent on exports as the US. Joe Biden, as I said, is known as a free trader. He has been a long-time supporter of free trade agreements. During his time as vice president, he led President Obama's administration's efforts to create TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. There's also some hope he could revive TTIP, the equivalent for us in the transatlantic trade and investment partnership. President Trump never had an interest in TTIP. Of course, TTIP was also not very popular in Europe, and there were many here in Europe who were actually very critical vis-a-vis the trade agreement. But it was Trump who stopped, who ended negotiations on TTIP, and instead he imposed even tariffs. He imposed tariffs on steel and aluminium, and he threatened with imposing tariffs as well on cars. And this would have been the super-GAU for European car manufacturers, particularly in Germany and France, but also in Hungary, in the Czech Republic, in Italy, and in Spain. All these countries have a substantial and important car industry or car parts industry. We very much hope that Biden will not listen to protectionists in his own party, and that he does not impose tariffs on European exports the other way around, that he does away with the tariffs imposed by Donald Trump. We can also expect that he will do away with blocking the functioning of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. Europeans also see the need to reform the WTO. I think there is a common goal, a common vision, the need to have a common approach to make the WTO a functioning body to regulate global trade again. Another topic to look at, of course, is China. Great power competition, as we know, is back on the global scene. The de facto hegemony of the US ended because of the rise of China. Economic rise, but also economic rise is, of course, followed by political rise, and China has invested quite a bit in its military land-based, but also maritime. So it really is challenging the US on a broad area of different aspects. And in the US, there is bipartisan consensus that great power competition with China is the most important challenge for the US and for American allies. Biden himself, during the campaign, has expressed concerns about the threat posed by China in many areas: economic, political, and of course also security. But his approach will most likely be different from Trump's policies. Biden will most likely seek to work more closely with us, with allies, to develop a coordinated approach to deal with China. This will be a particular challenge for us, for Germany, because of our deep economic engagement in China. But it could also become a challenge for Central and Eastern European countries who have also developed their own special relationship with China as members of the 16+1 group, which is now called, after Italy joined, the 17+1 group. And of course, this group was founded here in Budapest in 2012. A Biden administration will also most likely take a firmer and more consistent line against Chinese violations of human rights, particularly in Xinjiang, but also in Tibet and in Hong Kong. On this, of course, he will look at us. He will ask for European support. But even as it will compete with China, also the Biden administration will most likely look towards areas of cooperation with China. For example, in the area of fighting the pandemic. The pandemic is by far not over. We need to vaccinate a substantial part of the global population, not just in Europe, not just in the US, not just in China, but globally, in order to do away with the pandemic. Climate change is, of course, an issue where we need China on board. Of course, also others like Brazil and India, which started to hide behind the Trump administration. It was Obama, the Obama administration, and Obama personally, who brought the Chinese and the Indians on board. And we very much hope that Biden will continue on this line. Also, nuclear non-proliferation is an area, a third important area where we need and where is cooperation most likely possible between the US and China. Europeans, of course, are at least as much interested also in the new administration's line on Russia. During the campaign, Biden has called for more stringent measures to deter Russian meddling in US and other countries' affairs, particularly in elections. Particularly East Europeans, Poles, Balts will applaud Biden's reaffirmation of US commitments to NATO as a deterrent against Russia. At the same time, and this would be an urgent priority vis-à-vis Russia, is the new, to extend New START, the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. This will expire in next February, so it will be on the agenda of the new administration within the first 4 weeks. We in Europe, of course, have a long-standing interest in arms control and disarmament agreements because we believe that this will enhance, that this will foster, this will underline European security. In general, President Biden will most likely seek a more stable relationship with Russia, which is very positive from our point of view. Let me conclude by saying that we expect a strong personal desire of President Biden to restore the US to a more traditional foreign policy line. He will reach out to Europeans and other allies and partners to promote shared values, multilateral engagement, and a common approach to dealings with China and Russia. The Biden administration may also be open to new ideas for strengthening defense and technology cooperation with Europe and other leading democracies. There's also some potential under a Biden administration of a new trade framework, which might even include some of the elements of the failed TTIP negotiations. But at the same time, an agreement which will provide stronger protection for workers at home and not less important, a stronger protection for the environment. Well, but partnerships have also always two sides. Europeans have to reach out to the new administration with proposals of their own, proposals on climate. So why not thinking of transferring the European Green Deal into a transatlantic New Deal? Why not coming up with proposals of our own on trade issues or on dealings with China and Russia? Europeans in Brussels and national capitals should use the transition time until January 20th to come up with concrete ideas, and during the first couple of months when the nomination process is still underway. We have to do our homework. We have to come up with proposals of our own. Time is up, as I see. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm open to your questions. I'm open to your comments. Feel free to ask and state whatever you want. If I can answer questions, I will see. Thank you very much for your interest.
Yes, sorry, I have a question. May I talk or speak? Okay. Yes. Thank you very much for the very interesting speech. My question concerns the further perspective of the European security and defense policy. Here, if we look at the past 4 years, we could say that Trump was also acting as a kind of external federator or external unifier. And in fact, we could see some progresses within the EU, like PESCO, the European Initiative to Intervene, the European Defense Fund, and so on. But if we look what happened since the election, we could see that we have new frictions again between the more transatlantic orientated countries. Oh, sorry, I start the video, sorry, between the more transatlantic orientated country and countries like France. If we look at the dispute between the German Minister for Defense, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, and Macron about the question of a strategic autonomy of the European Union. So what are your expectations concerning this possible new frictions due to the fact that we have less external pressure now in the discussion about a European defense union?
Well, yes, this is indeed something which is very much feared, particularly in Paris. You're absolutely right. Well, there is commitment of the German government. And they came already up with a specific plan to extend defense spending until we reach sometime in 2034 the 2%. And of course this has to be invested into hardware and into strategies, and I expect that we will see many projects in the next couple of years. The problem is on the German side more on the political the political consensus is not really there that we should rush to come up with huge projects to reach those targets of 2%. Though if you look at commentaries in German journals, there are also some voices saying that it was a narrow win by Biden, even after a disastrous pandemic, and the record of Trump was not good dealing with the pandemic, and this is even agreed among Republicans. And he has won more than 71 million votes, so there's no guarantee that in 4 years we will not have another change in the US. Because of his age, President Biden is most likely a one-term president, and the vice president is, of course, always a likely candidate. But it's not clear if Kamala Harris could be a candidate, though she is a centrist, which is appealing sufficiently enough to independent voters in the US to actually have the presidency secured by the Democrats. So it might be just a 4 years interregnum, if you want to call it that way. And the pivot to Asia was started by Obama, and the biggest threat is in Washington perceived by developments in Asia. Well, China, of course, and this will not go away. This will dominate U.S. foreign policy for decades to come. So it would be wise for governments in Europe to really invest seriously into own capabilities. It's fine with me not to call it strategic autonomy because this resonates not well with quite a few people of the electorate in Germany. But at the end, it has to go this way. And these policy changes will of course not come overnight. It took us such a long time to build a national consensus around the Bundeswehr participating in peacekeeping operations outside of Europe. But there is a consensus built around that. These things do not happen overnight. It's a process, but of course it also needs political leadership. And of course, well, we all know there are elections next year, and it will definitely depend on the outcome of next year's elections.
Thank you very much.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I think we have a little more time. So if you have a comment, if you have a question, please feel free to unmute your microphone.
Okay, if no one else has a question, I will. First of all, thank you very much for sharing these insights, and I think it's a great format. I think it's a good opportunity to share and talk about our research and the topics that concern us all. My question would be about you highlighted in climate policy quite a bit as an important common agenda, maybe. And I was kind of intrigued now when you said, okay, Biden, Harris could just be kind of an interregnum kind of phase. So what would that mean if, for example, Biden would now do what Obama did, so just without any backing really from the Congress, and I mean, then everything could fall apart again. So how do you think should Biden approach climate policy and make sure that it's more stable than just what Obama did, basically?
Yeah, well, Obama didn't have a majority in the Senate when the Paris Accord was signed. So he only had a majority during his first 2 years in office. But well, and this is the criticism vis-a-vis Obama, that he didn't even try to sell the agreement to Congress. And he had Biden at his side. So Biden with his record in the Senate. So frankly, I would have expected a little more at that time. To try to bring the Senate along, but of course it was already the time of polarization, and it started already during the Clinton times. During the Clinton times, the political divide really started to deepen, and it continued during Bush, the Bush W administration, and it continued growing during the Obama administration, and of course during the Trump administration as well. If it's a different story if Democrats would win Georgia, but I do not expect is going to happen. It will also depend on if the Republican Party will be able to sideline Trump and the Trumpists and the Tea Party's members of the Republican Party in order to rebuild a more middle of the road Republican Party. If Trump stays around, and that's what I expect, that he, if he wants to run again in 4 years, I think that's even possible. But and if he wants to run again, he has a good chance to actually win the nomination if he stays active during the next couple of years. And this could be a permanent campaign Biden could face during the next couple of years. And if this happens, there will be no chance for Biden to work with a Republican majority in the Senate. So the best thing we could hope for there is that he tries to invest in infrastructure, to convince the House to dedicate money into a green recovery, as we are trying to do in Europe, actually to build more photovoltaic, to build more wind energy, invest more in wind energy and more other renewables, because this, of course, will stay. It will, of course, in the US only be invested if it's feasible and if it's economically profitable, and this is a good base that it will stay even after 4 years. But it could happen that in 4 years a new president will do the same what we expect Biden to do the very first day in office, that he puts the US again out of the Paris Climate Agreement. But we have to use these 4 years. The last 4 years, Paris didn't really move forward, and we in Europe we had hoped to take the lead, but we have experienced during the last couple of years we cannot replace the US. As I said, it was Obama who brought Modi and who brought Xi Jinping on board, and we were not able to do this. And I expect Biden to be able to do this, and I expect also Biden to be willing to do this. So we have to use as much as possible those 4 years lying before us to get as far as possible in climate policy.
Thank you very much.
Okay, if there are no further questions, no further comments, I thank you all. And I hope the next time we will meet here at Andrássy, we will meet in the Spiegelsaal and have a glass of wine after the talk. All the best to you, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
See you.